on my handy dandy iPad. And I will call the meeting of February 1st, 2016, of the Beavercreek Township Board of Trustees to order. The first order of business is to pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have before us an agenda. Do I have any additions, deletions, modifications? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kreitz.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the payroll for February 3rd, 2016 in the amount of $271,559.43.
Second.
Mr. Kreitz.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the bills in the amount of $235,699.36.
Second.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kreitz.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held January 19th, 2016.
Second.
Mr. Kreitz.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Make a motion to approve the special meeting minutes held January 26, 2016.
Second.
Did you get the names of both?
I'll put them on the bottom,
Okay.
but they're not normally in the minutes, but I'll attach it.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kreitz.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
We have a pre-scheduled visitor with us today, Superintendent Denny Morrison of the Xenia Community Schools.
First of all, we definitely appreciate the opportunity to come here today in front of you and share some things that are going on inside the Xenia Community School District. I've brought with me today the Assistant Superintendent of Schools in Xenia, Christy Fielding, and she'll say a few words as well. But we think that communication and transparency are extremely important, so we want you to know what's going on inside our school district. And you made a dangerous comment earlier when you said, take as long as you want. But I promise you, we won't do that, I promise. You know, we have an awful lot of good things happening right now in Xenia Community Schools. Candidly, we're in the best financial shape that the district has probably ever been in. In the last 3 years, our revenues have exceeded our expenditures by $14.3 million. So we are definitely living within our means. I attribute that to the fact that between our treasurer, our assistant superintendent, Christy, and myself, every single purchase order that gets approved is approved by one of the three of us. And so therefore, we make sure that we're getting good value. If we think we can get something somewhere else of equal value for less money, we're always doing everything we can to save. And so that's one thing. I can also tell you that Christy, who heads up our business office and technology, between our transportation department and our maintenance department, we see an annual savings of $1.4 million. So a lot of good things happening in our district. And she could probably tell you about some of the energy savings and those things going on, because every time I turn around, she's presenting me with another check. So we have a lot of good things happening there. We're being very fiscally prudent. We're fortunate in that we're adding courses. We are basically, we've increased academic opportunities for our kids. Our enrollment projections for this year, for example, were 4,301 students. And as of last Friday, our enrollment was 4,511. So we have 210 more students than the state said we were going to have projection-wise. Right now we have students that were homeschooled, we have students that were online, we have students that were attending private schools, community schools. They're coming back to Xenia schools, and we like that. We're pleased with that. We had a meeting earlier today talking about some of the additional course offerings that we're going to be able to have for next year. And we're talking programs like technical writing, film and literature course, information technology, web design, business administration, career connections, and of course we've added a complete list of STEM, or Project Lead the Way, which is the foremost STEM program in the United States, to our middle school and to our high school. So we're pleased about that. From a special education standpoint, one thing I know that you know about in Beavercreek is that you do have a large number of special needs youngsters, students on an IEP. We have the same thing in Xenia. And previously or prior, what was happening was we were taking these students and we were sending them to a different location to receive services. Well, you know what? That makes no sense. We can provide those services in-house better and less expensive, less money. And that's what we're doing. We're bringing those students back now. Last year, we saved $500,000 because we brought those students back into our school district. Our student achievement right now basically is a value-added grade. The last one we received is an A. And if you're wondering, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, we see all this stuff in the newspaper and it always is confusing. A value-added grade, just think of yourself as a student. And when you got your report card or your grade card, you took it home. You had an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. I won't tell you what my grades were, so you can think about your own there. But the average grade was a C. So if the expectation in the state of Ohio is that every child receives 1 year of academic growth, 1 year higher student achievement, then the rating that the district receives is a C, because that's average. Last year in Xenia schools, we received an A, which means our average student gained 2 years worth of academic growth or student achievement in 1 year. Which shows that we're taking our students from where we get them and we're bringing them along. So we're definitely proud about that. Our curriculum department is working hard, providing professional development to our teachers to make sure that our teachers are teaching how kids learn best, not how they teach best. Because obviously every student learns a little bit differently. We've got an awful lot of good people in Xenia Community Schools. Very, very proud to be there. Our preschool just received for the second year in a row a 5-star Step Up the Quality rating, which is the highest rating that a preschool can receive in the state of Ohio. 5 years ago, the preschool in Xenia had 85 students in the program. Today, we have 229 students in our program. So we're definitely growing by leaps and bounds. And it was just a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I can't remember which, the graduation rates came out. And our 5-year graduation rate in Xenia went from 82% to this year 90.3%. It was our rating. So we climbed more than 8 percentage points in 1 year. Folks, good things are happening in the Xenia Community Schools. So I wanted to share that with you as township trustees with a large number of the population that you represent attending Xenia schools. I wanted to share that with you. The second thing that I want to share with you, but before I turn the podium over to Christy, is 5 years ago, in 2012, we opened up 5 new elementary schools in Xenia. 50% of those buildings were paid for by local residents and taxes, property taxes, and the other 50% was paid for by the state with tobacco money as part of the Ohio school facilities process. This construction project came in ahead of schedule. It came in under budget. Our buildings look great. There were no change orders or very few change orders, and they are definitely a source of pride to this community. I cannot take any credit for that, but I can tell you who can take the credit, and that's Christy Fielding and the job that she did. Right now, we have another opportunity in our school district. That was segment 1 of the Ohio School Facilities Commission. Right now, we're about to enter into segment 2. And the bottom line is, we are working on a master plan for our secondary buildings. The 5 elementary schools put us in pretty good shape there, but our middle school and our high school is where we can make some improvements now. The plan is to have a master plan that's been accepted by the Ohio School Facilities Commission by April, and if it's approved, we will have, again, approximately 50% of the dollars needed will be coming to us and will be approved this July, which means then we would be moving forward with how do we raise the other 50%. I can tell you that there's a lot of discussion going on. We're having basically meetings every other week, core group with the architect, with folks from the Hospital Facilities Commission to make sure that we get accomplished what we need to have accomplished. I'm not going to stand here and tell you today that we have a plan. We don't have a plan. We think we have some ideas as to what we can do. You know, one of those is, you know, very simply, well, if 50% is going to be paid by the state with tobacco money, and by the way, this money is only guaranteed for a biennium. Okay, so therefore, when the next biennium budget comes out, maybe this won't be there. All right, so what we're going to be doing is trying to, you know, get our act together, get moving forward, so in July, when they say that our share of the money is available, we can take advantage of it. You know, we may be looking at a new high school. We may be looking at a new high school and a new middle school. We may be looking at a new high school, renovate the existing high school, and move our middle school into that building. We're not exactly sure how we're going to be able to proceed, but one thing is for sure, we're going to need to purchase some land. We're going to have some land to either to build a new building. Of course, if we decide to renovate both buildings, then we wouldn't. But we don't believe that's what the community is going to want. And yes, we're out talking to everyone, basically, that will listen, to talk about some of the exciting things that we have planned for the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Christy at this time, and she can talk about some land or some sites that we're considering.
I apologize in advance, I only brought 5 copies, but I can get you more. So we're really excited to share some potential sites. We've looked at several sites, and we've limited it down to this packet basically. And these are in alphabetical order, so they're not in order of how we see them. And so I just want to go through each one of the sites, kind of give you the pros and cons that we're seeing right now, just so you understand where we're coming from. The first site is the Anderson Cox Thomas site. This is on 42 across from Right Cycle Estates. Right now, between the owners, there's 163 acres. We have utilities across the street. We'd be potentially looking at annexation into the city. That is something that's come up with this particular property. We would get the utilities board number 42. A major traffic study would have to be done at this location, because what we are looking at is, you know, how do you get this amount of kids and this amount of buses turning left onto 42 into this particular site. So right off the bat, we know that we're going to have to do some sort of intersection improvements for that left-hand turn, a light, potentially, you know, a road into the property. And the area that would make sense is basically across the street from where the apartments area is. So that's where we're looking there. There's some floodplain in this particular site, but not very much. And so that's pretty much summarizes that property for us. The next parcel that you have in front of you is property owned by Gertie's. This is 438 acres of property. Previously, our understanding is this owner was interested in doing residential development to tie in the expansion of that neighborhood that's over there, Sterling Green and the estates. So we're not sure. We haven't had any communications with the owner yet if they're even interested in this type of development. You know, at first glance, I really love this property, but as we start to kind of dive into this property and look at site costs that we would potentially be responsible in full, it starts to add up very quickly for this potential site. But we haven't eliminated it. A major traffic study looking at, you know, Valley, if you're coming off of Valley and Upper Bellbrook, how do you get into the site? What type of road do we need to build to get into like the bulk of the property? You know, is there some improvements that would need to be made to Valley for safety purposes coming into the site? You're looking at turn lanes, lights on Upper Bellbrook. Then for traffic purposes, how do you connect that property to Lower Bellbrook? So then, what type of improvements need to be made to Van Eaton possibly? What kind of connectors to get it to Lower Bellbrook? The other big item is that a lift station would be required for this particular property. And we would most likely also need a force main taking it down to the existing waste treatment plant off of Lower Bellbrook. So as you can kind of, those costs add up pretty quickly for this particular site, but it is near a bulk of our students. We have a lot of students who live in this particular neighborhood. So the next property is the Harson property. This property is at the corner of 42 and Stevenson. It's 186 acres. This particular owner, we are being told, wanted to use this property for high-end golf course community. So at least at some point in time, they were interested in selling the property, so we assume they still are. Traffic study would also be needed here so that we can figure out, we are thinking that there needs to be some sort of connection off of Country Club into this property, most likely at Regency, so that it can connect to 42. We're also looking at road widening, a light of some sort, and some sort of entrance into this property. This property would also most likely involve a FEMA revision, so that we would have to do a letter of map revision so that we can adjust where the floodplain is there. So you can adjust the flood line, but you can't adjust the floodway, so we'd have to look at that there. A lot of the utilities are near this property, so we don't think that's quite as big of an issue. However, there is road work. It's being engineered right now and is hoped to be finished in 2020 for the intersection at 42 in Columbus. So if we were to decide to do this property, what is currently being engineered, or what will be engineered here very shortly, will obviously be impacted because they would need to take into account the massive increase of traffic for the site. So the next property is the OVCH property. This property is located off of 35 and is currently part of the industrial park. It's 152 acres. It is shovel-ready site. One of the things here is whether or not the city and the county would be interested in turning this property over or selling this property, since they have prepared it for economic development purposes. So that's kind of a question up in the air right now. A traffic study would be needed for a light somewhere coming into this property. We have some concerns about stacking issues coming off of 35, widening movement in order to get traffic back out of the site, and then proper access, how to get cars back on the highway, because obviously that's one of the main ways to get into this site. This particular property would be serviced by a lift station that is across the street on the AIA property. Right now there's a building, but there are no pumps and there's no electric, so that cost would be part of this particular site. As we move on to the next property, it's actually right next door. It's at the intersection of 68 and 35. There's actually 4 owners that would be involved in this particular location. And if you're kind of wondering, it's this area right here. So 4 owners are involved there for a total of 75 acres. A lot of the same thing that I talked about at the OVCH property would be involved at this particular property. Some sort of lift station would be involved, road widening, a traffic study for lights, for stacking purposes, access back onto 35. Same sort of issues on that particular property. Then our final location that we are looking at is the Simon Kenton and vicinity property. This property is located on 2nd Street in town. Depending on how many owners we're looking at, there's anywhere from 39 to 77 acres. The Isom property and the Blandford property we know is currently for sale. The city of Xenia, we've had some very basic conversations with them. We feel that they would be potentially willing to turn that property back over or sell that property. And then you have the Church of Nazarene, and we have not had any conversations with them yet. This particular property, obviously there's an interest because it is in town, so there would be a lot of walking traffic to this property. The stadium is nearby, so access to the stadium would be fairly easy. It's also a good connection to our current middle school building, Warner, so connection to that property for some more green space is also available. We would have to do a traffic study for this property as well, potentially locating a new light intersection at Massey in Second so that we could connect down to Industrial Boulevard. Utilities are all around this particular property. We would also be looking at the cost for demolishing several buildings between the multiple sites. So that's pretty much a bird's eye view analysis of the sites we're looking at. If any of you have questions, I'd be glad to answer what I can at this point in time.
For a combination new middle high school, how much property would you want?
It really depends on the design of the building. If we were to decide to do two separate buildings, then the site needed for that would be much larger than if we were to do one building with shared services. So if you're sharing like an auditorium, your kitchen space, your gymnasium spaces, that could potentially be put on a smaller property. I think we were looking at roughly 80 acres. So that is kind of like the site size we were looking at if we're going to do two buildings or multiple buildings on one site.
Anyone else?
I had a question back on your student population growth, just curious if that is organic growth, or you're recapturing students that were going to charter schools and private schools, or where is that growth coming from?
I think it's a combination, in that, as I said, we have students that are coming to us from charter schools, from community schools, from private schools, online schools. These are students, in some cases, that were in Xenia, left, and now they're coming back. Xenia schools went through a difficult time financially. I'm going to say 5 years ago, a lot of reductions were made, and so now, because of those reductions that were made back then, they cut a lot of the programs, and people left because they said, what do we have to offer? Because we've been so fiscally prudent, and we do have our financial house in order, now we're adding these courses back in, so people are coming. I also can tell you, I've spoken with several of the realtors in town, and it kind of is music to my ears. What they've said is, for the first time and as long as they can remember, residents or people coming to the area are asking for Xenia schools. So I'm pleased with that, and that's the trend that we hope will continue. But again, we're up 210 students from what was expected this year.
And one other question, I guess, you pointed out that a number of students live in Beavercreek Township and attend Xenia schools. And it seems like once a year at least, we get a couple phone calls of folks that didn't realize that their house falls in Xenia City Schools district. And so what is when we get those phone calls, number one, they're typically asking, is there an option for them to go to Beavercreek schools? And our answer is, or at least my answer has always been, contact the Xenia School Board and talk to them. And you can talk to the Beavercreek as well, but your options are within that school district that you reside in. So I guess, but I understand that they have other options, and that there's funds that go from the state to the school that they could opt to attend a private school, for example, if they wanted to.
There's a number of things that can happen and should happen. First of all, the realtor, when they're selling property, should be saying, this is, Xenia Community Schools or
Unfortunately,
Beavercreek
the
Schools.
call usually comes after the closing.
You're correct in that Beavercreek is what is called a closed district. So if you do not live inside the Beavercreek attendance area, you cannot attend. There are other options, like you said, charter schools, online schools, community schools, private schools. But you know what? We don't want that. We want those kids coming to our district, and we're doing everything possible to make it as inviting as possible for them.
Usually they ask, how can we change the district? And that hasn't been done in years enough. And
Well, you need 500 signatures, and even then, the likelihood in Columbus of them changing is not very good at all.
But the positive steps and the message you're delivering are something that we can echo back now and give them, good reason to reach out and call you.
I would hope that you would, that would be great, thank you.
I have one comment from this was yesterday's newspaper. Good for you, suing the state on the charter school money.
Well,
Thank you.
We're
I don't know why
not,
they're not doing it and joining that group, but
there's approximately 30 districts across the state that have taken the same step that we have, and I'm not gonna tell you that we were the leader. But when we saw what some other districts were doing, we thought that it was a very good idea, and it certainly makes sense. Because quite frankly, it is a burden on the local taxpayer. And so that's what we're trying to be respectful of, as our local taxpayers.
thank you, Mike. Is Beavercreek in that 30? Because it wasn't in the paper.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us, and have a great rest of the meeting.
Looks like your is in Beavercreek.
Thank you again.
See, one citizen in the audience. Do we have any citizens who would like to speak to us at this time? No? Okay, we don't have any old business, we don't have any new business. Mr. Zaharian.
Thank you, Board. On page 3 of your packet is a application, including a resume for an alternate for our zoning commission.
We only have one application for whatever,
That's correct.
to a board, whatever it is, and I'm the chair. This doesn't even say often, it just says the zoning commission. No.
Questions? Both yourself and Mr. Amrine, you've interviewed him, and you've met with him, and
Yes.
you make the recommendation that we appoint him.
I would recommend moving forward. I think he would be a great addition to our zoning commission. Just looking at his resume, but after we met with him last Tuesday, I believe. Yes, last Tuesday, we recommended moving forward.
And I concur, I know Mr. Nifer. I think it'll be
Would you like to make that?
Sure. I'd like to make the following motion, whereas Ohio Revised Code 519.04 permits the Board of Township Trustees to create the zoning commission for Beavercreek Township, and whereas Beavercreek Township Trustees have considered available applicants for said zoning commission, now therefore be it resolved after due.
If we can't resolve it, so we get a second.
Second.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kretz.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Yes.
Sorry. Now therefore be it resolved that after due consideration of all the evidence presented, the Beavercreek Township Board of Trustees voted to appoint Justin Nidifer as alternate to the zoning commission, said term to expire March 31st, 2021, or until a suitable replacement is appointed.
And I'm watching.
Thank you, Board. Next, several items. First one starts on page 7. It is that time of year again for our legal agreements. I did also, I apologize, I did not put it in the packet, but I did pass out before the meeting at your spots there the several years of history of our cost of what has been approved in the previous agreements, and including some charts. I know that was helpful, and there was a comment last year about having that in place. This will be the third year of our 4-year RFP that went out in 2014.
So this chart just indicates the individual cost per hour of the various staff members of the firms to which we are.
That's correct. So it's
Yeah,
It
a
doesn't tell us how much we pay.
no,
the legal
this doesn't
costs.
show a history of what we paid with legal. I can tell you 2 of the attorneys we didn't use at all last year, and that was Dunleavy and Ms. Wanda Carter. But you can see that some of their costs have stayed consistent, some of them have increased just a little bit. Some didn't increase at all.
With the agreements that you included in the packet, I didn't see a red line comparison to the previous year. Are there any material changes?
The only changes would be if there's a cost change, and the address. The last agreements had 1981 Dayton, they've all been updated. So
Everything else?
51 Orchard. Everything else is the same, except for some of the costs that potentially had gone up.
I think
There was no
service
change.
address change too.
There is a firm change, and that's under Miss Wanda Carter. She is independent now. She's out on her own. So there's an address change plus there's no firm listed. It's her as an individual business owner.
That's the way she did it.
Yeah, she's.
She's just on retainer in
Yeah.
case we need any advice.
Yeah, essentially,
in that
two
area.
of the agreements are essentially retainers, BWC, which would be the Dunleavy and Miss Wanda Carter.
Any questions?
I asked fiscal officer if we had actually made a retainer deposit with any of these addresses. The answer is no.
No.
They seem to be satisfied with having the agreements in place and when, as needed, we call them. Just pay for services as they come.
One thing I would add, some of the agreements that were sent has the board signing, and I believe two of them have need authorization for me to sign the agreement, so.
Any questions from the board?
The question always arises, is there any reason, you're obviously putting these in the packet based on your recommendation, that we renew with these same firms. The question comes up every year if there's any reason for discussion about changing representation in any of the categories, be it labor, general counsel, workers' comp, or annexation issues. So from a satisfaction standpoint, I have, based on 2015 and 2014 and that history that I was involved in, I have no reason to recommend a change.
Nor do I.
I concur. Do you want to do the resolutions?
And the first one, Dunleavy, I just need some authorization from the board to allow me to sign on behalf of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to enter into an agreement with Dunleavy, Mahan, and Fury LPA as presented for services for calendar year 2016.
Second.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.
And I'll need authorization to sign.
And to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board of office.
Make the second
Thank
addition to the edition.
Oh, I just added it. You were, I assumed it's part of your,
That's part of it.
Yes.
your motion. It's-
And he
still
concurred
yes.
on the second.
Okay. Are you all still yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm good.
So,
Yep.
Okay, the next one.
I'll be back to him.
Thank you, board. The next one is TAP. And that one, board, you'll have to, each of you will sign the agreement.
All right. I'll make a motion that we approve the contract between Taft Tennis and Hollister LLP for the calendar year of 2016, and to authorize the administrator to,
This one, yes.
okay.
Second,
So no TA, is that correct? Okay.
trustee Sines.
All right. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next agreement is for Miss Frick. And this one, I'll need authorization to sign the agreement.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to enter into an agreement with Surrey Down Turner for 2016 as presented,
Second.
and authorize the township administrator to sign the award.
Second.
Mr. Kretz,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Graf.
Yes.
Thank you, board. The last one is for Miss Wanda Carter. And this one, the trustees will sign and retain, I believe.
Make a motion to approve the contract with Ms. Wanda Carter Law LLC for the calendar year 2016.
No, this one, you guys sign.
No, I think that was not
Trustees. Second.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kretz.
Yes.
Ms. Graf.
Yes.
Thank you, board.
It's always painful to go through attorney stuff.
Next item is the Green County Sheriff's Office bi-weekly report. This was the new format. Hopefully it is easier to read with the lines. We should, at the next meeting, have a monthly report for the month of January.
Looked like a standard 2 weeks.
Yes. Thank you, board. The next item is the Finance Department's bi-weekly report. Are there any questions?
I have none.
Any other?
No questions?
Thank you, board. Next item is Human Resource bi-weekly report. And this starts on page 31. Are there any questions?
Do we have a timeline on, if we had one firefighter we did not hire, is that correct?
Correct.
And so do we have a timeline on when?
I hope to have someone processed in the next 2 weeks, provided that they pass each of the hiring steps.
Okay, so what was, answers the question is, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, the information.
We will be bringing someone to
Everybody
you.
has all the information we need to agree to want to hire someone. Will be forthcoming, and you will have a recommendation at the next meeting.
Yes, provided that they pass through.
The individual that did not accept the position stayed where they were or took another position?
They stayed where they were.
Okay. And I'm gonna ask a question, I guess, to both you and Chief. This is the second time that we have gotten to the finish line and not been able to cross in the last couple of months. Is there, as far as a new hire, is there something that is something that makes our department less desirable, or is it just the nature of they've been at their place long enough that they've decided not to leave at the last moment?
The instances that I know of, and actually there's 3 that I can think of that were close enough where I would think that they would finish, were all related to the testing requirements. 1 for the physical and 2 for the CPAT. And so they got all the way through the process at that point and then didn't go any further.
Decided not to, or failed the test?
I don't know.
Decided.
They didn't share that part with me.
Okay.
So, and then the most recent one that we had hoped to hire last week, he actually had all the testing done and then did not show up for our physical, correct? Actually resulted in us having to pay a fee for failing to show. So I haven't heard from him why he chose not to, unless you have, but yeah, I have a suspicion that it probably had to do with the
The
testing
outcome.
itself. But I don't know that for a fact.
Okay.
But we did get 1, so
Right.
we're 25%.
Yeah. Okay. That was just an observation and.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's actually,
We
I am
haven't had it
surprised
many
by it. I
years
thought we'd have
because
more
we were
people.
hiring from our people that we had. will we be spreading our area of looking? Since we do know that in this year, next year, there will be other opportunities for hiring, because we have career firefighters who might choose to come to the end of their career. So do we have a process by which we will be expanding our area so that we have a bigger choice from which to choose?
We are currently reevaluating the hiring process based on these last several applicants who got to a certain point, and then, and like the chief said, we don't know for sure if they're, if they pass or fail the test. Obviously, one didn't show up to the test, which was named. So we're reevaluating it. We will probably come forward with some recommendations that will include potentially some changes, or looking at a different area to look at outside, publish outside the Dayton area, or further out, or do we go straight hiring new employees that we've done in the past? Or a combination.
Very distant.
Yeah.
I mean, the presumption is that we communicate the requirements up front, obviously, so it's a minimum as far as our testing requirements, what they have to complete before they can be hired.
That's right.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, board. Next item, starts on page 41, is the zoning department's bi-weekly report.
It's a busy month, first month of the year.
Ed, I'm gonna ask the same question I've asked before.
And we have an answer.
Good.
The,
Would you come up to the microphone?
Sure.
To make sure it gets recorded.
So the question was on 2011, the spike. There's any history or background on that? I apologize, I keep asking questions until I get an answer.
yes, the spike in revenue in the zoning department in 2011 was due to a single zoning action, and that was the permit for the new schools exceeded $12,000 by itself. So it was a one-time charge.
And just for posterity's sake, it'd be good to note that as a flyer, so that when you look back and you say we did 37.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
I can put an asterisk by there and offer an explanation, sure.
Just so it doesn't catch somebody else. Great.
Okay.
Was this 13 and 12 that flowed through your department, was that a stack and that essentially landed on December 31st and got processed on the 4th, or is that true activity for the month?
No, that's true activity. These are permits that were issued. There is now 1 or 2 pending that'll go into the next cycle. So we're at least at 14 now. The difference between 12 and 13 is that one of them didn't require a driveway permit because it's not on township. The driveway permit would come from the county because it's on county right of way. So,
Anything enlightening from the conference,
from whom?
from the OTA conference for zoning?
I personally think that the best value to the department this year was the training value realized by the zoning clerk as she assumes more and more responsibility within the department. For me, the highlight workshop was the one on TIFs and JEDs, and so I attended 2 or 3 workshops on economic development tools, and those were most interesting and valuable, I think, to me.
Have no other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Thank you, board. Next item is the IT bi-weekly report, starts on page 45.
Mr. Terry, if you could come up, I just had a couple of questions for you. looked like you were investigating, some different storage options.
Yes, sir.
Does this go back to the tape backup that we talked about with Mr. Harris?
Yeah, I had a conversation last week with Unitrends, who currently provides our virtual backups. And they had some interesting information on cloud backups as well as disk-to-disk that we might be able to utilize in one of the fire stations. So it'll support our
Gives you the
off-site.
off-site and your still managed, self-managed.
The initial pricing looks doable, and we're still working that with the EMC. We just gotta get our rough raw data, and retention requirements for our long-term storage to the best of our knowledge.
So that would ultimately be in place of tape backup, or that would be in
If we could go disc to disc and it's, the price is comparable, then yeah, I think we could get away from the disc or the tape backups altogether.
Great. And still, it sounds like Windstream is leveraging support for a 3-year agreement. Is that the best way to phrase it, politically correct?
It's, yeah, we haven't heard any word back as of Thursday, I believe I sent it back to them. It's, well, it's in their court right now. I will pester them again this week. To see if they have any response at all to the email that's just sent. As of yet, and has been, have a,
We do not have an exit.
Well, one of the things we've
To
asked
AT&T.
MTM to provide is an updated, so it's an automatic renewing agreement. Now, when there was a company change several years ago, there's nothing from them on their new, we never renewed an agreement. So it automatically renewed every year, so we asked for that information. And in response to ask that information, they come back with, we'll move it for $100 plus another 3-year agreement. Which I have some concern with is that, and it was addressed in an email that Mr. Terry did send to MTN, or excuse me, to
Windstream.
Windstream, I'm sorry, MTN, that's the last one. Windstream was, I'm not comfortable moving forward with another agreement with them if this is the level of service we receive from them.
Fix the problem, then we can discuss it.
And that's what we pretty much said in the email was, fix the problem and then we can discuss moving forward with an agreement, so.
Was
There
the
is
old-
an exit provision,
Was the
you
old,
just have to pay the remainder of the current 1-year renewal term,
which is how long?
which that's part of what's not clear because
Did the old
10
agreement have assignment rights? Were they able to assign it to a future candidate?
I believe so, yes. But the agreement, we have the agreement itself, which is the date of the agreement, but the renewal term goes on the installation date. So that's what we're trying to determine, is when the installation date was, to determine when the actual renewal term is.
What kind of advance notice do we have to give that we're not choosing to?
I think it was 30 days in the agreement, but that's what we're trying to find out is if the installation, if it goes by the installation date, we might have signed the contract, and this was going quite some time ago.
2004.
So if we sign the contract, let's just for argument's sake, say January 1, and installation didn't complete till April, or even further later in the year, that's the date we have to find. And that, I think, is where Windstream is not forthcoming on that date.
Send them a letter and tell them it was January 31st, and let them put the burden of proof on them to tell you what it is, or what it's
Give them
not.
30 days.
Well, we wanna give them like March 1st or something, so we have a 30-day window to terminate.
If you terminate it now, do you have will AT&T move it forward or not?
We can get another vendor to move it, absolutely, but then we'd have to pay up to our anniversary date to
Pay out the
penalty
contract.
there.
Yeah, we don't just,
Correct.
Well, not if we give
You
them
don't know
the
the date
same,
of
but
the
that's still.
contract, so
that's,
on
that's,
their end, if you send them a notice and say, our records indicate it was March 1st, and just
30
throwing it
days
out
now,
there.
that's the 30 days, so then your contract's up and you're okay. There's nothing to pay out.
But ultimately, you get them to move the
Well, that's, you know,
service so that then you can then work forward on your
yeah,
things.
and that was clearly in the email we sent to them was, you know, just, we'd like to work with you on moving the line and then we can have discussion about the next one.
I mean, this is something we've been trying to do forever.
That's it, it's Windstream
I
has
mean,
been.
is there any breach in there?
Where's their office at?
It's a very favorable contract.
I'm not sure where their home office is, it's, I'm talking to somebody in North Carolina most of the time, I believe.
Oh, we're having two conversations.
It doesn't really provide
The fall on their part, breach
right,
contract.
and not much on in terms of the quality of service that they have to provide. It's a pretty minimal contract.
The other issue is they seem to be having a turnover of employees because the employee that we were originally talking with and then moved it up to the next level of service issue. Those two individuals are no longer with the company. So even when we were on a conference call last week with them, they said, well, they're no longer with the company, we have no record of them. We were supposed to move along. So, I mean, it's not very good customer service.
So what's the impact to the township by their lack of service? What pain are we feeling right now?
We gotta go down to the
I don't have a
building
fax
and get fax machines, our faxes.
Okay.
How many faxes do we get?
Why don't we do an e-fax?
I do a lot of what I can do, but there are still things that, people just don't do. They don't scan documents.
Right, I'm saying, do you understand what an e-fax is?
Well, we scan documents and then I email it to people, if that's what
No. So an e-fax is, you can actually get an e-fax number, okay, that incoming and outbound faxes can go through. You don't need a fax line, you don't need a landline or anything.
it goes
So-
to my mailbox.
So you give me a fax number, I fax a document to you, it'll go right into your email box. And then if you have a document you wanna send by e-fax, any size document, you can fax it from your machine to an e-fax, or you can scan it and email it to whoever you need. So you can eliminate the whole problem, you know, the
Definitely
e-fax.
look into that.
Many
It's
of
like
the voice over
pennies.
IP companies provide that to residents voice over IP
Right.
as well.
Every attorney I've dealt with has always had an e-fax.
Yeah, just be a,
And most,
wanting to keep the same
it's
number.
competent real estate companies, they've got.
I'm not an IT person.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So it might look at an e-fax number.
And in today's
Well,
world,
but
you get a new
I
phone
mean-
number, you get a new number. That's all.
Oh, yeah, that's
I
what
mean,
they
even
were-
if you number issue, can you just have that number for the e-fax number?
That would be ideal if
Yeah.
we could do that.
We've looked at that, forwarding the number, we do have a technology issue in there's forwarding the number, but I don't know about forwarding the number to an e-fax line, so we can check into that.
Yes, can't have a line, we have to have a physical line in place for fax. But,
I would look into it and
Oh,
Google Voice
absolutely.
and all these services, it's all out there.
Right.
we do have an inside track in Windstream, that used to work with out at the base. It works with Windstream, and it has been elevated up 4 or 5 levels in the company. So that's
Okay,
all I know.
that might solve your problem.
I see you looking at that, and we do what we do.
I think you're having a consensus in the thing.
Yep, sounds like it.
Get out of Windstream and get me. That's pretty much what I heard, right?
If that's the only thing, if there's other,
Well, yeah,
there's
so,
probably more than that. I assume we're not using a T1 just to fax, because that's,
right.
we could get a landline.
I mean, there are other issues that have come up since this that is alarming to us with our current contracts.
All right. Only knowing the thumbnail of what you deal with on it, those are the thumbnail recommendations I'll get back.
Yeah, just don't know what changing the number, what impact that's gonna have, if we need to go that route.
Number should be portable.
You can, yeah,
Should we
number should be
report that
portable, and you should be able to forward that number.
You should be able to force port that number.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
That's, like I
yeah,
said, we have to have the copper in place to support it, so, but,
you can port it to a cell phone.
As
Or
long
the-
as,
or the
if we can
defects.
use that same number, that would be ideal. We'll
Yeah,
definitely look into it.
that way you keep it that same number.
It's on all the, it's on everything about the township, that's why we're trying to keep the number, it's on all the old
Keep
documents.
the number, port it over to a new number, and then eventually you can change it or keep it.
When we get the next stationery, well.
At least I know you can port it to AT&T, so.
Well, we do currently have, half our, one station is on the AT&T contract, so.
You can add that number to go with defects. At least on the private side of the world, it works pretty well. So, good luck. Okay.
All right, thank you, board. Next item is on page 48. Your purchase request for Station 62. There's information in your packet, starting on page 48. in regards to the purchase.
I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 00362 to Shop Plumbing for the replacement of water softener at Station 62 in the amount of $4,302.15, and authorize the township administrator to sign for report.
Second.
Mr. Hurts.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Board, next item is the road department's bi-weekly report. That is on page, so I'm going to page 52.
I had a question that was not on your report, and it's, maybe Alex or Mr. Parks can answer this. There's an observation I made when I come down Yellow Brick Road from the factory, and that is that every morning for the past couple of weeks, there is a truck with a water tank, either putting water into the river or taking water out. I don't know. I haven't stopped yet to ask them. Today, I drove down Lee and Xenia in between the high school. They're running, there's a gas line or
Yeah, they're updating the lines.
the same logo is on the truck. And so they're doing water drilling, boring. And so I don't know if they're taking water from the river or putting water back in or sludge into the river. They're there every morning.
I haven't caught them yet, but my best guess is gonna be they're taking water out.
Shouldn't they go around the corner to
One would think that would be the easiest, and that's why it's there.
get 2,000 gallons for $12?
Yeah. We'll keep an eye out and stop
It's
that.
just an observation, it's the
Well,
same
tell
logo.
them what time it is, no?
So,
Do you know about the approximate time?
I did like around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
We'll slide that in tomorrow.
It's like 5 or 6 times I've seen it. And then today I happened to see the exact same truck over there. The truck logo. I'll give you the logo.
Oh,
You know which one it is.
yeah, I do.
On your report, the year-to-date, so for the 2015, it was through this time of year.
Actually, the last Thursday when the report was written,
Okay, but the 2015 was not for the year, but just for that,
the same time period.
okay. So we're comparing apples and apples, I like the apples from him.
I had no other questions.
Thank you, board. Next item is the fire department's bi-weekly report. That starts on page 53. Any questions?
I just had a question. What is the Healthy Heroes? What is that?
It is a health and wellness partnership with, I believe it's Premier Healthcare, and there is some grant money that apparently is available to evaluate physical condition of the firefighters currently, and then make recommendations based off of the equipment that we have in the facilities on exercises that they can do on duty.
I didn't know if it was a statewide or local.
I don't believe it is. I think it's a Premier initiative, if I recall correctly.
Great. I had a question about an item that was not on your report. This was late last year, we approved the purchase, and I can't remember the name of the machines, but it was as an automated CPR. I don't remember the name of those machines. but I'm
Yeah,
sure-
Lucas device.
Right, so the, what is the estimated time frame for those to be delivered?
The EMS division is the group that will be doing that, and they're in the process of compiling the 15 points of light. They're a little bit leaderless right now because our EMS battalion chief is currently off duty on sick leave. So I'm not sure where it is exactly in the priority system. I know once he gets back, it's one of his highest priorities. But I think right now they're trying to manage day to day and not introduce anything new. So they'll be doing it as soon as they get the clear guidance that they need to make it happen along with everything else.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Ward.
Legal advisor?
Nothing to.
Trustees, do you have any?
I have nothing else.
No. I think we all enjoyed and gained something from the conference. We each attended sessions at the Ohio Tax Association conference last week, on Thursday, Friday. Each of us doing different days and times, I guess. And we will bring together our information and we can get together. Had some suggestions, I think several of us have brought back, made some minor suggestions to tweak some of the things that we did. Fiscal office.
And the permanent appropriations, that's the motion, and it was in your packet, so.
And these are just into the general funds, I mean, not general fund, into the fund balances rather than the line items. Appropriation.
Correct.
And I did.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we approve based on the recommendation of fiscal officer Christy L. Aaron's permanent appropriations for calendar year 2016 in the amount of $25,488,797.51.
Second.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes. This time, we're going to executive session. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to consider the employment, dismissal, promotion, and compensation of a public employee, and under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G8 to consider confidential information related to the marketing plan, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, and personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
Second.
Are you talking about employment dismissal, promotion, and compensation of one employee, or is this several? Can I put employees? Are you speaking about all of those things?
Employees.
So I can put or employees, because otherwise it
Yeah,
feels like
that's
you're
fine.
only
Yeah.
speaking about one. Just
No,
want to
that's
make sure.
employees.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.